What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Nickel gap versus shiplap. Often those two words are used interchangeably, but there are some major differences between the two, and we're going to talk in this video about the difference between a nickel gap and a shiplap and some key things that you need to know before you purchase it, install it, put it in your house, select it as a builder, whatever. There's some really critical, important differences, and I'm going to show you that in this video. So we're going to go through this video and I'm going to share some of what I think are really important distinctions between shiplap and nickel gap. Just realize these two names are thrown around interchangeably a lot of times. So you just have to be discerning as a carpenter, as a builder, as a homeowner, and understand what product you're actually purchasing, what product you're going to be installing, and what the end look is going to be. You can get the same end look with different products, but the technique and manner of installation is very different, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video. First things first, as a general rule, nickel gap is going to be a tongue and groove product, meaning your two pieces are going to be tongue and groove, and they're going to actually interlock, and they're milled with different shoulder heights and a groove here that's going to give you that quote unquote nickel gap, which is the look that people are wanting whenever they say nickel gap. So there we go. Shiplap, on the other hand, is a very different manner of installation and manner of milling. Shiplap consists of rabbets on the top and bottom. The pieces do not interlock with a tongue and groove. They overlap, hence shiplap, different than nickel gap. Now you can see here, I milled these two pieces out of a piece of nickel gap just to show you this. So these pieces have a rabbet on both ends, but you put them together and you get a nickel gap. Here you have a tongue and groove product, you put them together and you get a nickel gap. So two different profiles yield the same look. So you might be thinking, well, if they yield the same result, who cares about what the product is or what the milled profile is if it looks the same at the end? Well, it's not all the same. You'll actually get a far superior result depending on the thickness of the product and how the product is installed, hence rabbet versus tongue and groove. So let's talk about this first thing here. You'll find that different vendors and wholesalers will sell shiplap that is thinner. The first thing you'll notice here, this particular product, I just got done installing about 2 miles of this on this home, and literally it's 3/4 of an inch thick. I love the 3/4 inch thick product because it is going to mask inconsistencies in the wall much better than say a 1/2 inch product. So that's something important to keep in mind when you're selecting which product you're going to use. A tongue and groove material that is thicker is going to tend to absorb those inconsistencies in the wall a lot better than say a 1/2 inch thick product, because the 1/2 inch thick product is going to be much more flexible and it's going to tend to conform to those inconsistencies. That's really important. Now, the other key consideration here is how easy is the installation of the product. And for me personally, I would say a tongue and groove nickel gap is much, much easier to install because it interlocks. So to me, it's just easier to get everything to go together when I'm installing by myself. When you have a shiplap, this may be milled so that your shoulder height automatically gives you that spacing that you want. Sometimes it is not. The unique thing about shiplap is you can actually increase your reveal size in there by raising it up or down. Now you cannot do that with a nickel gap. With the tongue and groove nickel gap, you are stuck with that, and if you try to increase the size, that obviously is not going to look right because of the way it's milled. So that is one advantage of a shiplap. If you're going for a larger reveal, you can achieve that by raising or lowering it accordingly. Now here, to me, is the biggest key distinction between a nickel gap installation and a shiplap installation. Whenever you're installing shiplap, you're typically going to be installing this on the wall, going from bottom to top. So as I come up, I've got this piece here. My next piece above it is going to overlap. Well, on the shiplap installation, the bottom is not interlocked with the piece under it. So this means you have to face nail this piece. That creates a bunch of extra labor for the painter or whoever has to fill all those holes. Also, we all know those holes do not disappear. Especially with a semi-gloss finish or a darker color, you are going to see all of those nail holes on the face. So you're going to be nailing in the tongue up here, which will be hidden, but then it's not a tongue, the top of the rabbit up here, but then down here you're going to be forced to face nail that on a shiplap installation. So that's no bueno. On a nickel gap, because it's tongue and groove, this bottom is going to interlock. So I can nail this piece through the tongue into the studs, and then whenever I put the next piece on, the bottom is interlocked here. So all I have to do is again nail through the tongue, which is going to be hidden. So with this type of tongue and groove nickel gap installation, I'm not going to have hardly any exposed nail holes, which is awesome. So as I've been going through the installation on this home for the last couple weeks, I've got a lot of questions asking, do I use adhesive with the product that I'm installing? And the answer is, it depends. This is really important. If you're installing a tongue and groove nickel gap and you have wall framing or ceiling framing perpendicular to how you're installing, you're going to be able to nail into the framing and you do not need adhesive. Here's the kicker. A lot of installations with a true rabbited shiplap go bad over time because people try to nail the bottom with, number one, a nail that is too small, and number two, no adhesive on the back side to keep it glued to the wall. What can happen is over time, especially if this is real wood, it can expand and contract and it can actually pop loose. Just different things can happen, but it will not be perfectly flat across anymore. So I hope that makes sense. But if you're installing a true rabbited shiplap and you're counting on just that face nail to hold that thing for decades to come, you may have problems. So in my opinion, if I'm installing a shiplap product like this, I want to be using adhesive behind it. In a product like this, tongue and groove nickel gap, this thing is locked together. It's not going anywhere. So if I'm nailing into framing, I don't need adhesive. Here's the kicker as far as the adhesive goes. Even with a tongue and groove nickel gap on this particular house, most of the nickel gap that I installed on the walls was vertical. So I had the option, either we can install blocking horizontally across half the house to accommodate this vertical nickel gap, or I can use adhesive to help keep that nickel gap pegged to the wall where I wouldn't be able to nail into the framing. So a vertical installation of nickel gap is a little bit trickier. I do use adhesive for that because I can't nail into framing necessarily on every piece. When you do have to use adhesive, it works best to set a bunch of pieces in a row and then add adhesive to all those pieces at the same time, so that you're kind of batching your workflow rather than put adhesive on a piece, nail it on, put adhesive on the next piece, nail it on. On big jobs, that's a huge waste of time. So as you can see in this video, I like to set a bunch of pieces up in a row, put adhesive on all of them, and then nail them up. Just want to emphasize this point again. I alluded to it earlier, but with Shiplap, your groove is adjustable. So you don't necessarily have to stick with that 1/8 inch nickel gap. If you want more of a reveal with Shiplap, you can just simply raise it up because you've got that freedom with the rabbet. Which product is faster and easier to install, Shiplap or Nickel Gap? In my opinion, by a mile, it's gonna be tongue and groove Nickel Gap. Whenever you're installing tongue and groove Nickel Gap, it's pretty easy to just set one piece on top of the other, give it a couple taps with your mallet, and it'll go together, and then you just nail through the tongue, and it's no big deal. With a Shiplap, especially if you're having to do your own spacing by putting spacers between the two pieces, it's just a lot more cumbersome. And again, they don't interlock, so as you're going up a wall trying to put one piece on top of the other, it can just flop right off because they're not interconnected. So I much prefer a tongue and groove Nickel Gap. Now with your Nickel Gap or Shiplap, which type of material is better? Are you going to be better off going with a pine material, a real wood, poplar, or an MDF like I have behind me here? The particular wholesaler that I get my millwork from sells this tongue and groove Nickel Gap product, and it is MDF. The advantages are many with this product. Number one, MDF is going to come to you in 16-foot lengths. It is kind of floppy, it is kind of heavy, but generally it's going to be straight. It's not going to be subject to the same tensions that wood has, cupping, bowing, crowning, all that stuff. So as you install this, even on a 16-foot long piece, it's really easy to keep everything running perfectly straight. With real wood, you're going to get all of your product, and you're going to have a lot of pieces with crowns and cups and those types of things, and that's not going to give you that really sleek, nice, easy install that you want. So I do really like this MDF product from an installation perspective because it's really easy to move around and keep running straight, and it's very uniform. If you're watching this and you've never installed a real wood tongue and groove product before, let me tell you, it is an absolute nightmare whenever you get pieces that have a major crown in them, because then you're having to try and pull the wood together or pry it together and use all these different means to try and get this inconsistent product to yield a perfectly consistent nickel gap, and it can be a major pain. So again, the MDF works really well for that really sleek install. With all of that being said about the benefits of the pre-primed MDF, something that is a major bummer is that most of these companies advertise this pre-primed MDF as being just paint ready, as in you're just going to magically slap it on the wall and it's going to be ready for paint. The truth is, in my experience, the primer that is applied in these factories, it's nice, but there are tons of blotches and little bubbles and drips and stuff that are all over the face of this product that have to be sanded. It's not like you can just install this product and it's paint ready. You will have blotches and dots and scratches and snipe marks all over it if you don't address those prior to installation. And you know, I'm a carpenter. It's really not my job to do paint prep but it's 10 times easier for me to sand this product before installation and get rid of all of those imperfections for the painter. You just need to be aware that if you really want to do a good job, you're going to have to sand this stuff before you install it, or the painter is going to have to try to sand it before you install it. But on a 9,000 feet install like I just did, it's unrealistic to think that that painter is going to sand all that stuff perfectly the way I am going to. So I like to do it at the saw. I use my power sander, my Festool ETS EC 150 5mm stroke. Hard pad is really important on this stuff. The nice thing is with this factory primer, it's not oily and gummy. It sands off really easily, so a quick pass knocks down those bubbles of primer and imperfections pretty well. The other thing is that if your sander is hooked up to the vacuum, you're also going to be cleaning the product as you sand it also, which again, it's just a nice thing. You're going to get rid of any scratches that occurred at the time of delivery. That's always a major issue because this stuff is getting slid around, and a lot of times there's scratches I have to deal with. The other big problem I have with this product is snipe marks on the product. And if you're not familiar with snipe, that is an imperfection that occurs as the material is milled. I honestly don't have any clue what the manufacturing process is for this MDF product. All I know is I see the imperfections at the board, at the ends of the board, usually a few inches in, which is consistent the same way we would have snipe marks running through a sander or planer. So I keep an eye on the ends of the boards whenever I'm installing this product. Also, it's very common to get heavy blotching of paint on the ends of these boards, where you also really want to pay attention to sanding that off as well, because it will not look good after it's painted with a semi-gloss paint. So all that being said, be prepared to add 10 to 20% to your typical installation labor to sand these boards and make sure that they're going to yield a really nice result. Taking this time to sand the product is especially going to be essential whenever you have situations where you have a lot of lighting coming through. Here I've got a fireplace bump out with vertical nickel gap. That is high lighting coming from the windows, and it's also going to be painted a dark semi-gloss color. Those two factors combined means you really need to do a good job with your prep work. Otherwise, every single one of those little dots of primer, scratches, imperfection, it's going to show up after paint, and it's going to be way harder to fix later than it is now, whenever you've got the opportunity just to take 10% extra time and sand the product to get it perfect before you install it. So hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I wanted to make a video just highlighting the key differences between a tongue and groove nickel gap product and a rabbited shiplap product. If you've got any questions, drop them below. I am curious what you guys are installing in other parts of the country. For me, with the retailers that I work with, I've basically always installed the tongue and groove nickel gap, and to me I think it's far superior to the traditional rabbited shiplap, but that's just me. So let me know what you think. I know that this stuff gets a lot of hate from carpenters. I don't really get it. Like, to me it's easy money. No, not everybody likes the style, but that is what it is. Changing styles keep us employed. So hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you on the next one.